Hello, and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile. This is the show where we get to talk about sports, we get to talk about business, and we get to talk about everything in between. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, you know exactly what to do. Like and subscribe over on YouTube, 5-star review on Spotify, and over on Apple Podcasts. Give me a 5-star review and say something really nice about me and my incredible guest today. I have Becca McCarthy. She's the Chief Operating Officer over at House of Athlete. Becca, how are we doing today?
Doing great. It's a great day to be alive, Michael.
You stole my line. Come on.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a great day to be alive. I appreciate you asking, Becca. This is going to be a fun one. I can already tell. We're going to have a great time talking about House of Athlete, all the incredible stuff you've done back in the day. We'll go on our little rowing tangent. That'll be a lot of fun too, I'm sure. But Becca, the first question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
So, Michael, I'm so glad that you asked this, and
Thank you.
love that you ask it to everybody.
Yes.
I think you should write a book and compile all the responses and send them around. I really do. I think
That's
it's
a good
cool
idea.
that you do that. But anyway, aside from that, I was ready. I'm prepared. I knew you were going to ask. Why do I love sports so much? Sports give people meaning. And what I mean by that is sports create shared experiences. You see it with professional athletes and teams, obviously, but you also see it with like marathoners. And even my 7-year-old soccer team understands this concept that we want and crave shared experiences with one another. So I thought about this from a fan perspective and from a participant perspective as well. So as fans, sports gives us permission to feel and exhibit all of the full spectrum of human emotion without feeling alone, right? I know that if I'm standing on the couch screaming at the TV, there's someone else somewhere doing the same thing. And as participants, shared experiences are even more impactful. I played college sports on a team with dozens of women, and I cannot speak to them for 20 years and come to a reunion and feel a bond with them that's indescribable. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. And that having that shared experience, whether it's like storytelling or values or stuff we went through together, you feel a connection with people, and that I think is what gives people meaning in their lives. So sports is so much more than sports. It's meaning.
And you kind of allude to it a little bit. I'll just use, I think maybe not your words, but your company's words, something about a tribe, right? I'm sure we'll get to the tribe in a bit, and people love that, right? It's that connection, it's that community, it's that ability, as you said, to share those experiences, to have that meaning. I love that you bring up the participant aspect of it, right? We just watched here, we saw the Stanley Cup Finals and the NBA Finals end very quickly, unfortunately. I'm a big Game 7 guy, so I was a little disappointed. But the one thing that I don't know if I love it. It's I don't know what it is, but seeing the losing team, especially of the Stanley Cup Finals, just like I don't want to see them sad, right? But you don't get that emotion, right? Not how many people win the Stanley Cup, how many people lose the Stanley Cup, right? And there's that, like, that is the lowest of the low. I've heard hockey players talk about it, like, you work so unbelievably hard your entire life, those 2 months to get there, and then it's over. And like, unfortunately, you're on the losing side, but you'll always, silver lining, you'll always have that experience with your teammates, right?
100%.
There's nothing like it. I can't say I'll ever lose the Stanley Cup. I did watch the Mets lose the World Series. That was sad. I was pretty sad about that one. That wasn't too fun, but it is what it is. Maybe one day, Becca, maybe one day they'll make me happy. But until then, I just keep reading books about the 86 Mets, and we'll see how it goes.
I'm sorry. Buckner.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? See? That's all it took. One quick word, and now I got a huge smile on my face. So we're good. Worse things have happened. But Becca, I'm very excited, very grateful. I love that answer. I think that's awesome. Maybe I will turn those into a book. That would be kind of fun. That's a good idea. I'll give you credit in some way, shape, or form. I think that'll be awesome. So,
okay. I'll write your forward.
Oh, great idea. Man, this is shaping up to be an awesome podcast. Thanks so much, Becca. I love it. So you are Chief Operating Officer, House Athlete. We'll get to House Athlete in a minute, but I did see that you have had an extensive background in the fitness space, high-level places, working at some cool companies. I have Form, SLT. You owned a Pure Barre for a little bit, like 6 or 7 years. That's pretty awesome. I guess, what is it about fitness and the aspect, right? Like a lot of people, I work out on my Peloton. I don't think I'm going to be working for Peloton anytime soon. But like, what is it about fitness that not only did you want it to be, literally your lifestyle, right? The way you live your life, but also the fact that you want to help other people encompass that lifestyle as well.
Yeah, I wish it was that philanthropic. I kind of stumbled into the business of sports,
Lucky you.
literally, resistantly, reluctantly. I've been an athlete my whole life, and I started out in a career in sports and was on the path to keeping my career in sports. And I, on the side, was training a lot I was a runner. So I was, former rower in college and transitioned into running. And that's a common transition, right? Doing something repetitive for long periods of time in a masochistic way and with a cult-like following of people and like-minded people. So I was very drawn to that. And I really like the half marathon distance. So I was doing that. And as I got older, had a lot of knee issues. So I sought out cross training opportunities, strength training, yoga, Pilates, PT, and I was living in New York. So, I had all of that available to me, but nothing was working all that well to facilitate my rowing. My girlfriend was like, you should try barre. And uh, my immediate reaction was, heck no, barre is dancey and it's not for me. I'm a serious athlete and I do things in a serious way. And she dragged me to my first barre class. It was misunderstood. I had made an assumption about how it was going to go and I got my butt kicked. It is a very hard and intense class. And more importantly, it was addictive. I had to go back. I had to strive for more and for better. And that is very much an athlete mindset, right? Like 1% better every day. And barre gives you that. It gives you the opportunity to, oops,
You're good.
okay. Barre gives you that. It gives you the opportunity to try new moves or try to be better at some of the same moves, whether it's mobility or strength or body weight holds. And so that was really attractive to me. So initially I started it as a way to cross train for running, and eventually it became the only thing I wanted to do. I was talking about my career to a friend at lunch one day and just kept diverting the subject away from my career towards, hey, let me tell you more about this barre thing that I'm into. And he literally said to me, you should just drop everything and do that. You're way more into that than you are about anything else. And so that's how it happened for me. I did acquire the rights to the market leader in barre, which was Pure Barre, for an area of Brooklyn. I owned and operated 2 locations for about 6 years and had the most fun doing that. We ended up finding that as the brand grew from 50 to 250 to eventually more than 600 locations nationally, there was a need for market consolidation. You started to see a lot of that with like the Planet Fitnesses and Orange Theories of the world in markets like Atlanta and Boston. And it just made sense. So we came together as a group of franchisees and consolidated the market under collective ownership in 2019.
That is
So
awesome.
yeah, yeah, it was quite a ride. And from there, I had the delight and privilege of working with founder and CEO Amanda Freeman at SLT. I ran SLT with her for 2.5 years leading up into the pandemic. We grew that business from 12 units to 26 units across 8 geographies, which was pretty exponential growth for a business of that size over those 2.5 years. If you've never heard of SLT, it is a megaformer based workout. Have you ever tried the megaformer?
Don't even know what megaformer means. So enlighten us, please.
The megaformer is a kind of Pilates machine that takes your experience. It's very similar to a reformer, but it takes your experience to the next level based on the way that the product is designed. And so SLT was a licensee of Legree Megaformer. And we created workouts for between 8 to 12 women and men in small boutique settings that are just killer. It is one of the best and most intense workouts that you can experience. But the pandemic hit after about 2.5 years there. And unfortunately, we had to transition in the business. And from there, I pivoted over towards actually digital fitness and then also eventually to House of Athlete.
That is awesome. So thank you so much for that background. The question I want to get to before we get to the pandemic digital fitness, I think that's a huge piece of this conversation. Why do you like doing this to yourself? Rowing, running, this super intense, Pilates. Like, what is it about you that you just are like, no, I can't, I have to go bigger, harder, faster, stronger. When in reality, like, I'm not here to say back off, but like, chill out. That's all.
Yeah. 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 I think it's something that it's a trait that you're either born with or you inherit. And it's something that when you're driven to accomplish something or you experience what it's like to succeed at something, it can be something that you continue to pursue over time, right? I don't really have a good answer for you. I just know that ever since I was a little kid, and I'm sure athletes everywhere identify with the same mindset, I wanted to win. And the competitiveness and the desire to win has evolved over the years for me from a win at all costs mindset, where it's just train as hard as you can, go as hard as you can, to where I am now, which is just an understanding of what overall competitiveness and achievement gets you. And one of the things that I think about a lot when it relates to that drive is this concept of flow. And if you've ever heard, and there's a lot of really great storytelling and writing and research around flow state, which I just absorb and love. There's a part of me that's very Adam Grant-ish all the time, but I think there's something to that flow state that you see a lot in competition and drive that is similar to the feeling that you get when it's very euphoric, it's very focused, it's very meditative, and you feel like the best version of yourself. You feel like you've achieved enlightenment, and that also can be very motivating and very addictive. So that's a very overly philosophical way of saying that there's a bunch of us out there that just do this thing and we compete endlessly and relentlessly, and we don't know why.
I respect the hell out of it. I think it's awesome. Need more people like you on planet Earth. I don't really want to be one of them. I'll keep doing my thing. I think I'm doing all right over here, but I respect the hell of it. I do like flow. Do love flow states. A little Pomodoro timer every once in a while. That always helps, right? But at the same time, like, that is just it's pretty incredible that you are capable, able, and not even just those, like, purposefully, willing to do that, when in reality you probably know, like, yeah, I probably didn't have to do all of this. But it is your mindset, it is your ability to kind of not be able to turn that off. And I'm sure you've been able to take that and push that into your career as well. I'm sure that that's not a mistake, that you've become successful doing a lot of the things that you've done. I think that's pretty cool. And having that athlete-driven mindset can be really helpful in business. That's why I like having a sports business podcast, because we get to talk to athletes. We get to talk to people that love athletes, were athletes, are athletes, and kind of how they take that and put that into business, which I think is really cool. Before we do, again, get to the digital, the pandemic, all that, I do want to touch upon your rowing career. So you were a rower, you were a rowing coach, and you spent some time at US Rowing. I also spent some time at US Rowing, which I think is pretty funny, prior to the pandemic, like right before the pandemic. So it all kind of unfortunately unraveled at an unfortunate time. But what is it like? Rowing watching it is very beautiful. It's very serene. It's very, like, kind of, as you said, very, like, just watching it, it's very flow state, right? Like, just kind of seeing and watching the team do all the things they do. It is awesome, and everyone can be in sync, and it's perfect when it's perfect. But man, it is. Like why do people do it? Like again, I just don't get it. Like of all the sports, why don't you just pick running? Like I just it doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
It's
no
hard to
question there by the way.
explain.
I was just throwing some words out there. Hopefully you'll come back with something.
Yeah, it is hard to explain. Rowing is hard to explain. It's one of those things that you know when you know, and so it lends itself really well to that meaning that we talked about at the beginning and creating that shared experience among people. And when I meet rowers, and there's just something that's understood about them that we just get each other. And there's a lot of things that are like that, but um, yeah, I think what drew me to rowing, also, rowing was an accident for me. I came to college to play soccer. I was a soccer player my whole life and really wanted to play in college. And in the first week of the season, broke my ankle
Ugh.
and was, in my freshman year and decided I was going to leave the school and I was going to go and find another place that would, keep me on the roster because the coach at my school had said, we're gonna bump you and you can come back next year. And so I was getting feedback from other coaches that if I came to that school, that I would get placed on the roster. And when I got better and as I got better, I could come back. So, at 18 years old, I was really lost and couldn't conceive of my life without sport day to day and being in college without that. So, was getting ready to leave, was on the phone with my parents. And I remember vividly, my dad said, "Why don't you try rowing?" I'm like, what? I can't try a new sport like today. That's the craziest idea ever. And I had actually gotten a voicemail on my, what was then our like dorm room phone, and from the rowing coach who, if you know anything about rowing in Division 3 or in a lot of programs, rowing coaches pick up the scraps from the early cuts and injuries. And I was one of those. So I was talking with him about it and said, I got this call from the rowing coach. Why don't you try rowing? I can't, I don't know. I can't, I'm not doing it. And he said, all you have to do is one day. You have to go for one day. And if you hate it, you can just leave in the middle. I don't care, but you have to go for one. So, I went mostly to just appease my dad, but also I was a little curious. And yeah, I had some amazing experiences in those first few moments. I sat in what was one of the best facilities for rowing in the Northeast, where I went to Connecticut College, and we have indoor rowing tanks, which is a luxury, and not every program, especially a program of our size, has that. And I sat in the indoor tanks and I got to experience the motion of rowing, surrounded by about 60 other athletes who were all in the weight racks, in the tanks, on the ergs, doing the same thing together. And the coach sat with me, and that was the other thing. And he's been a longtime coach of the program, a guy named Rick Rickey, and I got to give him props for always bringing the sport to me and really taking the time. But he sat with me and said, you've got this, you're a natural. And so that also stuck with me. And part of what drove me to be a coach in the future was that all it takes is one person, sometimes just giving a kid that kind of encouragement and reinforcement for them to take it and run with it and make something magic out of it. So uh, I enjoyed my first experience rowing, and from there I was hooked. I rowed for 4 years of college, captained the team my senior year, ended up going out of college, ended up coaching at the University of Colorado in Boulder, which is pretty landlocked. If you know anything about Boulder, there's no real water. So we row around in circles at a reservoir, and the program's super competitive and has done an amazing job with what they have. While I was there, I realized that there was not a lot of junior rowing. Actually, there was none, to be honest. There was no feeder for what was a club program at the university. So we were teaching college athletes about the sport more than we needed to. There was interest. So co-founder and I created the first ever juniors rowing program in the state of Colorado called Colorado Junior Crew, still functioning to this day. And we had some kids in the early days even go to college out of the program and get scholarships and athletic scholarships at like University of Washington and other major programs around the country. So that was from there, I was really addicted to not only the sport, but the business behind the sport and the opportunity that it could provide for kids. I had, after a couple years there, I had a unique opportunity to come back east and work with U.S. rowing. So credit to my former coach, who was my coach for 3 of my 4 years, Ava Kovac. And then ultimately, when I came back east, ended up coaching alongside her at my alma mater, while also had the opportunity to work at US Rowing and train juniors and coach them. I was very much an assistant. I had zero experience except for my time at Colorado, but got to learn a lot from the Steve Hargises of the world and many other phenomenal coaches. And that was also my first time really diving into operations and finances and the business behind the sport, travel, insurance, and that also really interested me. So, yeah,
Uh,
when were you at US Rowing? Did we overlap?
no, we did not. I was there. I ended 2019. I was there for a little while, so it was a lot of fun getting to work with the CEO directly. Some of the incredible people there. They were awesome to get to work with. How they, seeing the behind the scenes was very interesting as well, right? And it was 19 into 20, so right, we were getting ready for the Olympic year, which was really cool to be able to kind of see all that stuff happen. Obviously, we understand and know the 2020 Olympics were pushed to 21, so a lot of stuff. I didn't get to see really any of that. My tenure there ended prior to it was actually February is when it ended, and then obviously March is when the world ended. So it was just interesting to kind of see the run up the year prior to and those few months in 2020 to see kind of everything that would go into creating a Olympic experience for so many of these athletes. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head multiple times, but like the row, like every rower I've met, like I can probably meet someone now and without knowing them and be like, were you a rower by any chance? Because I got to talk to so many of them. The mentality is so unique and so incredible in so many ways, which is pretty cool. And it sounds awesome. Sounds like you did a lot. Shout out Colorado. There's water. Like I'm pretty sure there's a big river in Colorado. So like, yeah, it's landlocked, but like I'm sure there's some stuff going on there. So it's so cool that you were able to take that experience and turn it into something right, something awful, something terrible. Life ending at 18, you break your ankle, turns into obviously a fork in the road moment where you kind of just go off and really affect not only yourself, not only just the direct people that you got to coach, but so many people now. It turns out with these programs and with the opportunities that you had, planting seeds of trees you'll never sit under, but other people will, which I think is pretty cool.
Love that.
Love it. That's good stuff. Well, very cool. Thank you for that part of the story. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of everything, right? House of Athlete, you guys are doing some pretty cool stuff. Brandon Marshall, former Giant, big Giants fan here. So very, very cool. When I got to see that, I know he's doing a lot of stuff on the media side too, which was really interesting. But prior to getting to House of Athlete, like you brought it up, right? Peloton right behind me. As I said, we got it actually like 52 weeks ago. I'm on my 52-week streak, so shout out my wife and I for doing that. So we got it about a year ago. Obviously, we all saw Peloton was like the biggest thing in the whole world, digital, everything, right? We had Tonal, we had is LeBron the Tonal? I can't remember. There was like a million of them at the same time, and it was pretty cool to see because everyone's like, well, we can't leave our house, but we still want to, we realize we need to be fit, right? We need to, work on ourselves. You can't just sit there and do nothing all day, as we might have. Some of us did, unfortunately, for months. What was it? How quickly were you able to jump from, as you said, if I'm not mistaken, SLT ending and then going right into the digital side? How quickly were you able to make that leap and start to see like, hey, this is a huge, huge opportunity that we have here that, yes, right now is a unique experience, a unique moment in time, but let's try and capitalize on it as much as we can.
Yeah. The industry was already very curious about a digital at-home experience and mostly the hybridization of experiences in person. And COVID forced our hand, but the curiosity was already there, and we were having some of those conversations and laying some of the groundwork for that. My transition to Form, which was a competitor of Tonal and Mirror, is it's an at-home fitness mirror. It was about 4 months, and I came on board in July, I believe, of 2020, and as soon as I came on board, was faced with a lot of the same challenges as everyone else at the time. There's so much demand. There's no supply. There's millions of supply chain issues. And as how do we take advantage of the demand opportunity without with while being struggling with all of these challenges that are outside of our control. And so what I worked with and worked on was the go to market for the live one-on-one experience, which was delivered through the mirror, but was also possible outside of it on an app. And that was bringing together the trainer community, the coach personal trainer community, with the obvious demand for in-home personal training. Form created a proprietary video conferencing system, and similar to many others on the market, was really interested in data and analytics and how you could layer that over that experience in order to not only arm the trainer with the best view and the best knowledge in order to drive performance and outcomes for the client, but also to give the client an experience that they never dreamed of, right? And what does that look like? So we worked on that for a year and a half, brought it to market, and that was right before I transitioned into House of Athlete towards the end of 2021.
Yeah, that timeline kind of checks out. So how much of that was this the first project you were on? Was some of this, as you said, the curiosity was there in the industry? Peloton existed prior to the pandemic. Like,
Right.
it just exploded during it, right? And I only use the Peloton examples because they don't, they could pay for my subscription if they wanted to sponsor the show. Just throwing that out there. But with like, what was any of that in motion, or was this something where it was like, hey, we have these mirrors, but at the same time, we can't get enough of them out, so we have to kind of pivot part of our business? Was that kind of your doing idea or leading that project with really kind of starting from ground zero?
It the business was founded 4 years prior by a guy named Trent Ward and Eve Behar and a couple of others. So they had been working towards bringing this product to market. And obviously, Mirror was already in the market as well. Tonal was already in market. So there was and lots of rowing concepts as well, right? We saw hydro emerging as well. So there were lots of interesting conversations happening around equipment and in-home fitness. But the idea for live one-on-one was really Trent's. It was, how do we just not only take advantage of this industry being totally in shambles and people at home wanting to still work with their personal trainers, but trainers didn't want to go to people's homes during COVID, and they were working on Zoom. We could provide and intercept that experience and potentially create a major market for those services. But there was also the idea that you could disrupt an entire infrastructure and industry expectation around the coach livelihood. And that was what really interested me, David Harris, and a number of others, that said, okay, now we're talking about potentially valuing this health professional in the way that they deserve to be valued, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doctors, nurses, other health professionals make six figures and more and live really wonderful livelihoods and are rewarded for, in some ways, the work that they do to keep us alive and keep us healthy. And coaches and personal trainers do the same. So how can we reward them and shake up the way that we structure the value that we show them? And what we were able to do with Form was, without the overhead costs of real estate and the million other overhead costs of four-wall businesses that I was intimately familiar with, we could give a greater margin of the value and of the revenue we were bringing in directly to the trainer. And the trainers knew it. It was no surprise to them. They had already, we know, it was this whole idea of arming the rebels. They had already gone off and built these businesses themselves at, because they had to. They had no other way to survive in COVID. But then they realized, man, I can just pocket all this cash myself, pay for my Zoom subscription, and call it a day. So that was really interesting for how the industry was then coming back, how we were going to grapple with the revalue of that service, that good, right? So yeah, so that's, that was really what we brought to life at Form. And I had a wonderful time working with the team there. We built a team of over 100 fitness professionals that were on the supply side of that equation that, I just thought the world of.
That is awesome, and the way that you kind of frame that, right? It wasn't just how do we make more money in this situation. It's how can we literally change an industry? How can we be at the center at least, right? You need the supply, you need the demand. How do we put ourselves as almost like that marketplace, but also that service, as you said, with that with the proprietary video conferencing service that utilizes data and the analytics that, the user, myself, I love when I hit a PR. I don't really know what those numbers mean, but like it's cool, but like the trainer actually knows what those numbers mean and what you're doing and how you're doing it, right? So it helps both sides of the situation. Just staring at a Zoom screen is not as fun when you put some numbers and some stuff up there. It always makes it a little bit more interesting. So that's really cool. I could ask you a million questions on that, but you don't work there anymore. I'm sure you had a great time, as you said, but like let's move on. Let's move on to some of the stuff that you're doing now. You're working for House of Athlete. You're the Chief Operating Officer. One question I always have for anybody in operations, like, what are you actually operating on? Like, what does an operating team do? I'm always like, I work with operating teams all the time. I don't really know what they do. I mean, I know what they do, but like, I feel like it's such a vague word. What does the Chief Operating Officer specifically at House of Athletes do?
Yeah. Yeah. What do we do? I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe we.
well, I mean, like, I know you guys do a lot of stuff. Like, I know that. I talk to them. I work with them.
What
Like,
do I
believe me,
do?
I get it. But like, what exactly is operations? I feel like that term's thrown
Yeah.
around when it's just like, yeah, ops can do it. It's like, okay, but like, what is ops? What is ops? Let's start with that. High level,
Yeah.
super high level. Becca, what is ops? I'll clip
Yeah.
this, by the way, because this is going to be awesome. I'm sure, confident in it.
Yeah. So at a core level, ops is efficiency. It's creating efficiency. And that shows up in a number of ways. It shows up as project management, right? Creating organization out of chaos. It is scale, driving scale, creating foundations for scale, things like systems and processes. It's also where you see leadership. People need an understanding of what is the organizational behavior that I subscribe to in this organization? What is my role? And how do I grow as a member of this team? So it's performance assessment, it's creating insights and strategy from data. And again, it's at the end of the day, it's about driving efficiency in a business.
That was an awesome answer. See,
Well,
like you tell me all those things, and like while you're saying is like, yeah, I know, okay, I've seen her do that, I've seen him do that, like it makes sense. But the way you laid it out, that was just perfect. So I really do appreciate that. So what do you do at House of Athlete? What are the efficiencies you're trying to do? What's the data that you're looking at? How are you trying to create these processes? Tell me a little bit about the business, and then I guess how do you do all these things?
yeah, yeah. House of Athlete is a lifestyle and wellness brand that is bringing the experience of the elite athlete, which you and I love, to the masses. And it's the first brand that I've seen that is primed to scale athletic performance and scale the definition of athlete. What does it mean to be an athlete? When people say the term athlete, they think of professional athletes. And I think of myself, my kids, my friends, my college athlete teammates. And I also think of people that are on their feet every day. A guy working construction, someone in medicine who's standing and moving all the time. And it's really health, longevity, and wellness optimization. And again, getting back to what we talked about earlier, there's also a mindset component to it. I think, there's the idea of being an athlete is open at this point in time. We have so much conversation in the industry happening around data and optimization and health optimization. And we're starting to, offer things like optional MRIs for the average everyday person. We have people getting IVs and infrared sauna on a weekly basis and daily basis. And you have just a lot of curiosity around achieving optimal longevity and health. And for everybody, that's different. So, House of Athlete comes from the thesis and the philosophy that athletes, professional athletes, collegiate athletes, are the healthiest people on the planet. And that lifestyle and that mindset can be taught. So that's what House of Athlete is. We have facilities that in South Florida, and we're looking to grow that footprint over time, that bring that to life for our members. So we have about 400 members that can come into the facility every day and experience a class-based boutique fitness style strength training workout. But also inside of those same four walls, they have access to a suite of recovery services, just like when you would walk by sports medicine on your way back from the gym to go eat dinner as a college athlete. You can just pop by sports medicine and get some heat or stim or ice or tape or a quick massage, or you could have someone look at your gait and really give you some actual PT work. We also do IV and shot therapy. We have steam, sauna, float, hot and cold therapy. We also offer a full suite of yoga, meditation, breathwork classes. And we also have mental health services and access to the fundamentals around mental health, mental fitness, and nutrition. So our 5 pillars at House of Athlete, which is what we ultimately come back to and what keeps everything kind of grounded around that central philosophy, is how do you train? How do you fuel? How do you recover your community or your tribe and your mental fitness? And if you're checking the boxes and checking in across all those areas, then you're doing what professional athletes do and the best, highest performing athletes do, which is creating total wellness for yourself.
That is fantastic. And I think that I've had so many people on the show, former athletes, people that are trying to create businesses in a similar vein of, hey, we want to give the utmost, the number one, the top professional services to, heavy quotations, everyday people, right? People that aren't making millions of dollars on the field or on the court, right? So I think it's really interesting how you guys are going about that. One, before I ask a couple of questions about that, I just want to kind of take a step back. So the boutique word, you've used that, right? So you learned a lot of that stuff, I'm sure, from Pure Barre, right? Kind of creating those classes or understanding that aspect of it. You learn the one-on-one stuff from working with Form, and it's so cool. That's why I love going through people's careers, because when we get to the spot you're at now, I can almost point back to everything you said and be like, oh, so you kind of learned that there, and you learned some of that there, and you learned a little bit about that there. So I think it's important for people, younger people listening, like, hey, maybe you don't love your job. Hey, maybe it's not the greatest job in the world, but just take some stuff from it, because the further you go along, the more you're going to learn, and eventually you're going to get to an awesome spot like Becca and say like, oh wait, no, I know how to do all this stuff because I've done it all before. Now you can kind of culminate it together. You can get that C in front of your title, and it's not that bad. It's actually sounds like a lot of fun. So I just wanted to make that point, if that's cool.
I love that. I love that. And it's like, I'm a big, when people ask me what my 5-year plan is, I always just kind of tweak a little bit. It's like, take it one day at a time, really, right? Like, look at the opportunities that are in front of you, make those decisions, and have some trust in the process that you're headed in the right direction.
I love it. Good stuff. That's fantastic. So I do want to obviously ask some questions about House of Athlete as well. So it's boutique, right? As you said, it's a small number of facilities down in Florida. As you said, you're trying to expand on that. Did I read about an app, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes. Yeah.
So you have that as well?
Yeah. So we did. We invested in the hybrid experience, and we launched a House of Athlete app, which is our way of right now in this moment starting to scale this business and lay the foundation for how do we reach youth athletes, adult fitness members, and professional athletes around the country without immediately growing to 50 locations.
Yeah, locations get expensive. They get expensive very quickly, I'm sure, especially when you want to go into cities, right? So you guys, it sounds awesome the way you're doing that. And I guess with that, like how like the app has a service, it's subscription based, which is fantastic, super easy for people to understand. How are you able to take all this extremely high level information from the app side of things, but from the facility side of things, as you said, you could just walk past and go in a cold tub, you can get the sauna, you can grab an IV. How do you make this relatable to a person, right? Like this is something completely new. Unless you're looking for former athletes that are like, oh, I remember this, I like this a lot. If you're just kind of somebody walking off the street that says, I want to, step up my game, I go play basketball on the weekends with my friends, but I want to, I'm taking this very seriously. How do you make this like relatable to someone for them to actually take full advantage of everything? Because I could almost see it being like extremely overwhelming one of the first few times you walk in here and be like, wait, so is there an order? Do I do these things in? Like, how does it work and where do I go?
Yeah. So I'll say first of all, and this might come off the wrong way, which is fine.
I'll
But
clip it. Don't worry. No context.
we're not in the business of making it relatable. It's not for everybody. And it's a very specific way to approach your health and your wellness. We will give you all of the information that you need to know all of the answers to the questions that you said, right? When do I come in for what classes? What is the best way to structure my routine? What is the best way to approach the plate from a nutrition perspective? Where do I fit in this aspect of medical into my life? And at what point do I approach that, right? We answer all those questions for you as a new member, but taking ownership of that routine is also on you. Coming in every day, committing to a routine is hard. There's no way around it, right? It requires a certain amount of self-discipline and motivation and internal drive. And that is table stakes for us. You have to come with that. And if you have that, then we will help you do the rest as your partner.
That is absolutely fantastic answer. I don't think it comes off I don't know, whatever word you use, wrong at all, right? Like if you try to be everything to everyone, you're going to be nothing to nobody. It's one of my favorite quotes. Like it's so true. Like you have to be very specific, and it sounds like you guys have a very specific audience that you're trying to obtain, which just so happens to be someone similar to yourself. So you can kind of almost be able to say, how would I like to do this? What would I like to see, right? Because you have been very self-aware and admitting to kind of that level of drive you have. You understand not everybody has this. So like less people have it than don't. And I think that's really interesting. And it sounds like it's a hand in glove fit where you have gotten to, not only from your past experiences and everything that you've learned, but also just your personality and your drive and understanding. These are the people that I need. Like that is your tribe, right? To use your word again, like that is your tribe. And that is so cool that you were able to find a spot like this where you're able to take advantage of, again, all your past experiences, but your personality as well. I think that's so cool.
It is very cool. And it's not lost on me that House of Athlete is an absolute culmination of all of my past experiences dating back to coaching and Octagon and athlete representation and brand strategy and boutique. I mean, all of it, right? It's definitely not lost. And I think about it a lot and I'm super grateful.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that with us today. I think it's so cool. Hopefully people can learn a little bit about what you've done and how you've done it. So with that, like how being very specific, right? How like the app aspect of it, right? It seems like how are you able to make that as efficient as what you have with the facility? Because it seems like, again, going after a very specific person, this facility sounds set up. This sounds awesome. This sounds incredible for someone that is trying to do what they do. How can you have an experience like the app that is still trying to obtain that same customer, that same person, without all the essentially the extra amenities and all the things that really make what you guys are doing kind of take it to the extra level? Because, hey, I can download a subscription app and do some workouts on my phone too. What are you guys doing different that takes it to the same level, but on the app side?
Yeah, the big differentiator for us with the app is that it's holistic and reflective of our 5-pillar mindset. The thing that you'll find in the app, in addition to a very personalized one-on-one very prescriptive experience directly with a team of gurus and a strength trainer dedicated to you. The other things we offer are coaching on nutrition and coaching around mental fitness, which no one else in the space has combined into one consistent app experience. And the other piece is that we're bringing this to you in a medium that meets you where you are. So if you are a youth athlete that is striving to be on a collegiate team, or you're an NFL combine hopeful that is headed to the draft, and or if you're a retired NBA veteran and you're looking to get back into a specific routine, performance, adult fitness, youth, it doesn't really matter, because we have inherently in the distribution and in the product, we have a personalization that is very high end. It's luxury, it's premium, and it's not about being efficient. It's an expensive proposition, but you get a luxury experience as a result.
How do you make it efficient? Because that's what you told me your job is, right?
I know. Yeah, this is a tough one.
Right, that's what I mean. So I really appreciate the answer, but like now, like I mean, I say that kind of in jest and a little tongue in
Yeah.
cheek, but like I understand like the how specific it is, right? You have to be very catering to people. Again, just looking at your past experiences, hey, the one-on-one aspect. Well, where'd you
Right.
learn that at your previous job? It's like this is almost too easy at this point. You wrote the whole episode for me, so I do appreciate that. And
Yeah.
with that, like working with these elite athletes, right? Like you're probably not starstruck. You probably haven't been in a while because I'm sure you've met a lot of people along the way. But working with someone like Brandon Marshall, right, who created this company, created this idea, and has been able to help execute upon it. How much? What is it like seeing someone like him do something like this, and the ability to make that phone call, find that person, right? You guys have a partnership with TB12, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty cool. So we're working with Tom Brady now. Like how much extra authority, how much extra confidence almost does that give you guys to say, hey, like we're not just saying we're doing this, we're literally working with some of the best athletes that have ever existed. We're getting all this information, like we're going to give it to you, but you're going to have to work for it. Like how does that help you in your everyday job?
Yeah. Athletes generally make really great leaders. And Brandon is one of those people. He's actually, and I find this about a lot of athletes who have a second phase of their career, right? Like Derek Jeter, Kobe Bryant, and many others, Serena Williams. Uh, they have an ability to lead that pulls from all of their experience, having access to the greatest leadership that there is, right? Um, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, right? Like being in locker rooms with phenomenal leaders and people at every stage of of leadership, right? He's had those experiences, and so having being able to pull from that and having that wealth of knowledge and experience is great for a lot of athletes. And so it's always, for me, I love to hire athletes and I love to look for that characteristic in former athletes. But with Brandon in particular, he is also a natural born leader and entrepreneur. And I noticed that about him right away. I've been a COO to a founder CEO 3 or 4 times over now. And when I first met with him and started interacting with him, the way that I characterized his personality and his persona was that he is a serial entrepreneur that also happened to have a really successful 13-year football career. And that is absolutely what I believe. He was born to be a CEO. He does a phenomenal job leading our team and creating buy-in and delivering vision and strategy. And he is really the reason that this business will continue to grow and be successful and overcome all of the challenges that entrepreneurs and early stage businesses face in the first 5 years. He's also a student of the business, which is refreshing to see, right? Somebody who is not so narrow-minded and has blinders on. He's very good with peripheral vision, and he also is very humble and open. So that's enough of my Brandon soapbox. I enjoy him very much and think he is one of the more phenomenal entrepreneurs and visionary leaders that we will have in the fitness and wellness industry for the next 10 years.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
You were going to keep talking. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's it.
I love it. So one
Yeah.
thing that I do love about this show so much, I love having former athletes on that have started businesses. Like I've had so many of them on that have such cool ideas, and I think it's so, again, it's one to one, right? Like you being an athlete is essentially an entrepreneur because you have to work on yourself. No one's, especially when you're at the very high professional levels, like yeah, people are saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" But at the same time, like you have to take yourself and everything that you do to the absolute highest level, and you have to perform, and you have to do that to make sure that you get those paychecks because they're very quickly gone, unfortunately. So I think it is really cool. I've always admire obviously his playing career, but now that what he's doing in the media space, a little too hot takey for me sometimes, but hey man, he knows what he's doing, so I respect the hell out of it. But the business sense especially, I think it is so cool, and obviously his advocacy for mental health, I think, is important too. And again, it comes through with the business as it is one of your main 5 pillars, which I think is so cool. But no, shout out to him, but more importantly, shout out to you, Becca. This has been absolutely fantastic. I sincerely appreciate the time. One more time, Becca McCarthy, Chief Operating Officer over at House of Athlete. Where can we learn a little bit more about you? Where can we learn a little bit more about House of Athlete? You want to drop some links for us? I'll put everything in the show notes if anyone wants to click on some of them.
Okay, great. Will do. Yep, houseofathlete.com. Find us.
Easy. Do you do any tweeting or Instagramming or anything fun like that, or no?
Instagram all day,
Yeah,
every day.
love
Engage
it.
with us.
Love it, love it. I'll make sure to put all the links down there. But Becca, this has been fantastic. Time's the only thing we don't get more of, so thank you so much for giving us a little bit of yours. But other than that, hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Becca.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.